Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. We will get started in just a moment. We just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to join us before we begin the session. We have people tuning in from across the country today, which is excellent. It's so nice to have all of you here. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's Charity Village webinar. My name is Mercedes and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager with Charity Village. As we are gathering here on a virtual platform, it is important to acknowledge that each of us is joining this webinar from the ancestral or unceded lands of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people. I'd like to acknowledge I'm speaking to you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, which includes the Ojibwe of Fort William First Nation. Please join us in a moment of reflection as we recognize the Indigenous peoples as the stewards of this land. Let's acknowledge the mistakes and harm in our history and the ongoing injustice, and contemplate tangible actions each of us can take to move forward in a spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. For those who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions. So if you are looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is a great place to start. We also have a ton of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to quickly run through some housekeeping items. You may have noticed when you joined the webinar that you are automatically put on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants in today's session, it is important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so that everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. Look for that at the bottom of your screen. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether it's viewing the presentation or with the audio, please let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We will do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible, but in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar, and we will send you the full recording by email tomorrow. So if you get called away or disconnected, you will still be able to view the full presentation. I would like to welcome one of our presenters from the Ankle team, Ravi Verpal. Welcome.
Thank you, Mercedes. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to today's webinar. We're really excited to be here. Thank you for joining. Today, we're covering how Canadian leaders are using AI to strengthen financial operations and decision-making. My name is Ravi Verpal. I'm the Senior Financial Advisor and Head of Sales at NPOs. I work closely with nonprofit organizations across Canada to help strengthen their financial operations through a mix of strategic insight and practical tools. And increasingly, as we all know, that includes artificial intelligence. Today, I'm joined by an incredible panel of leaders and innovators. First, I'd like to introduce my colleague and co-founder of NPOs, Omar Visram. With over a decade's worth of experience working with nonprofits and mission-driven organizations, he brings a deep insight into how back-office operations can be reimagined for impact. Here's a fun fact about Omar. He's the kind of person who makes time to step away from the desk and take short outdoor walks to reset and recharge. Rain, snow, or sunshine, he's out there making the most of every season. We're also joined today by Melissa Safradine. She is the CEO of Canada Learning Code. Melissa has helped create over 1 million learning experiences in tech across Canada and also teaches leveraging IT, information technology, at the Ivy Business School. Here's a fun fact about Melissa. She actually started her career in accounting, so is very familiar with the subject matter today. Finally, we're joined by Rekha Rao Maya, a technologist and a board member who's led a 30-year career in technology and made the leap from big tech to focus on social impact. A fun fact about Rekha, she once stepped in to lead Melissa's role at CLC while Melissa pursued her PhD, so they are very familiar with each other. Let's dive in. So A quick word on Enco. Our story actually began in 2016 with one simple belief. You cannot build a great organization without really good books. Today, we serve over 300 clients, more than 100 of which are actually non-profits and charities across Canada. We really support them with their strategic financial services, everything from the base layer of bookkeeping through to CFO and controllership services. We are headquartered in the traditional unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So the acknowledgement I would like to give here is that our offices are situated here, and we are grateful and proud to be here. I'm going to pass over to Omar right now, who will, I'm going to cover another section here of how we use AI here at Enco. At Enco, we view AI as a tool to enhance human capability, not to replace it. That's to say that we are weaving AI into our processes to really speed things up and automate repetitive tasks. It really allows our people here to focus on delivering much more value to the client. Again, it's not about replacing, it's about enhancing. So AI is helping us gain efficiency, but with every insight, every report, and every decision, it's still grounded with human oversight. Our employees validate and refine absolutely everything that AI gives us. We will continue to invest in our people and not replace them. And AI really is here to empower, optimize, and help our workflows and give us better outcomes. The real benefits that we see here are speed, accuracy, with the human element touch of care very much still part of the mix. I'd like to now move over to introducing Omar, who will take you through the agenda for today. And thank you again for listening.
Thank you, Ravi. So today's session is really about moving beyond the hype and really helping nonprofit leaders to understand what AI actually means for their organization. We are seeing a shift from being a futuristic concept to becoming a practical tool that NPOs can leverage to strengthen their operations, to improve compliance, and to really empower people to focus on higher value activities. We're going to start by talking about what generative AI is, how AI has evolved, and why it matters specifically for nonprofits. We're going to dive into some real-world examples from organizations like Canada Learning Code, where they're already experimenting with AI in very practical and safe ways. It's critical to acknowledge that AI also does bring risks: privacy, security, ethics. We've all heard about it. Many of us are not sure on how to proceed. So we're going to give you some insights there. And finally, we're going to give you a simple framework for getting started, whether you're just exploring AI for the first time or looking to embed it into your day-to-day operations. Our goal for today is to really make AI feel accessible, actionable, and above all, responsible. So let's dive in. But first, my favorite, a polling question. How familiar is your organization with using AI tools today? Is it all day, every day, a few times a week, once a week, or you've never used it? Really interested to see what comes of this. Okay, so we have some preliminary results. All day, every day is about 14% of you. A few times a week is 43% of you. Once a week is 18% of you, and 25% of you have never used it at all. So interestingly, the highest group here is in a few times a week. I think we'll all really benefit from what we're going to learn today and probably start to see more use post this webinar. All right, let's keep going. Rekha, let's dive into generative AI.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Since Ravi already started by saying I've had a 30-year career, you all approximately know my age. And where I'm going with this is that in 1991, as I was completing my undergrad, we had to do a capstone project. Now, you don't know this fun fact about me, but I'm a huge Star Trek fan. By the way, the Jean-Luc Picard one, William Shatner second on my list, but I digress. In any case, my capstone project was talking about the AI components that I saw in Star Trek and the feasibility of them in real life. This was in 1991. The professors got a good laugh. They enjoyed my presentation. I did get a B. And when I asked why a B, Dr. Desai said, Rekha, lovely presentation, but I don't think we are going to see any of this come to life in our lifetimes. So Dr. Desai, wherever you are, I think I deserved an A because I'm still alive. And you know what? It's happening. From a very academic computer science term, AI has become so much more commonplace in the last decade. AI, or artificial intelligence, it has been around as a field of study since the 50s, which is why I was able to take a course and do a capstone project in 1991. It's essentially technology that allows computers to perform tasks that typically involve human beings and human intelligence. And these tasks included recognizing patterns and solving problems that are considered very human-like. Now, AI has come a long, long way since the time that I wrote my project. And from very early research, it moved to expert systems. Some of you might be familiar with those terms, to machine learning, and finally, deep learning and modern AI. Now, thanks to the very massive computing power that we now have because of cloud computing and the huge data sets that we now have because of things like social media and other types of data, AI can now actually recognize images and translate languages and create very human-like conversations. This is where generative AI comes in. Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new content based on prompts. Prompts is a common term used with generative AI. It really means input data. So instead of very passively looking at analyzing information, generative AI produces something such as new text or new image or new summary or a new financial forecast based on how it is prompted. Some of the tools that you might actually be familiar with, perhaps you haven't used them, but you might have heard of these words, ChatGPT, fairly commonplace now. There is Gemini, which is for information summarization. There's Microsoft Copilot, which is a part of the Microsoft suite of products. And I've used it for business document drafting and spreadsheet analysis and so forth. There's another term associated with AI, and that is actually two terms, assistive and autonomous. You'll hear these terms more and more. And the difference is really how much control the AI has over decision making and actions. So assistive provides recommendations, it automates simple tasks, it improves efficiency, but the final decision is always made by a human. A great example of assistive might be Siri, if you've used that, or Alexa or Google. Those are all assistive tools. Autonomous, on the other hand, makes decisions and takes action without human intervention. And it typically responds to real-time data that it's receiving. Now, a great example of this is a self-driving vehicle, where the vehicle is driving itself, there's other traffic around it, it's analyzing this data, a human being is not touching the wheel, and the vehicle is taking corrective action and moving forward. Where we are today is more assistive on this gray spectrum, much more assistive. AI helps. It helps us, maybe draft a proposal. It might help us build a forecast. What we do with it is up to us. Where we are moving, or where the industry is moving and the research is moving, is for AI to become much more autonomous, where it does, where it decides and initiates action. And that's why we are going more and more to higher levels of autonomous vehicles and factories which are completely robotic and fully automated with no human intervention. So the journey is from assistive to autonomous. So Omar started by saying that AI is an interesting topic, especially for NPOs, and I believe that completely. Please put me down in the column of advocating for not-for-profits and AI. To my mind, AI is about the promise is about productivity, about efficiency, and about transformation. And when it's used correctly, it'll have the power to reshape industries and accelerate problem solving. And that's why I think it's so important for not for profits. In my experience, in not for profit, we're always looking for operational efficiencies. I know I had to do many jobs, even though my job title was one. I had to dive in and help out in many, many areas. And that operational efficiency piece of it is something that AI excels at. It also can help us reach many more people. And at the end of the day, it's about maximizing our impact, right? So, really, those are the areas that I feel AI can really shine and help a not for profit make significant investments in their mission. Now, some of the organizations that I volunteer with or I'm on the board of, I've seen some patterns and use cases. I've seen AI being used to analyze a lot of data. I'm not talking about financial statements for 3 years. I'm talking, 10-year patterns and looking at patterns which would be very hard for a human being to really discern. I've also seen organizations use some AI capabilities to generate first drafts of a variety of documents so that the second, third, fourth draft could be more human oriented, but the first blank paper is sort of created by AI. I've also seen organizations talk about using AI for donor engagement and fundraising success. You can really analyze donor data so much better and figure out trends when you have an AI type tool doing that. And it's really, I think, if I were to net it out after saying so many words, it really allows organizations to do more with less. And that's what not for profits are all about, right? We try our best to do more with less. So as technology evolves, its role in this sector can only grow. Now, I talked about a bunch of things, but you know what? I want to talk to Mel about how some of these things are actually practices and experiments that Canada Learning Code has already put into place. So, Mel, would love to hear about some of the use cases and how CLC is using some of these tools.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, yeah, so one of the stories I'd like to share, and Robbie mentioned at the beginning, Rika had the pleasure, I guess, of leading CLC, I think, for sure, for a period of time while I stepped away. And when I reflected on that, my last day was the day that ChatGPT was launched to the public. And, we kind of know the trajectory that, hundreds of millions of users now. But I remember when I came back about a year later, I was in a meeting, and I always tell this story because I was sitting in a meeting and all of a sudden I had like Zara's Otter join the meeting. If you know Otter, it's a note-taking tool, AI tool. And I remember just being like, what is this Otter? Like, things are different. Things have changed. We started teaching AI back in 2016, so not as early as Eureka, but we've been teaching it for a long time. And we are an organization that has taught hundreds of thousands of people technical skills. We would have said we had seen technology advancements, we had addressed these things in the past, but even I was like shocked by the pace that AI had advanced. Through my work teaching and through CLC, I interview and I talk to like the leaders in AI in Canada, and they will all say the same thing. The pace is incredibly fast. So if you feel that, like, you are in great company, because we all feel that. And what I want to share a bit of my journey and sort of grappling with that and figuring out what to do with all these otters in our organization was really to like dive in. So we wanted to, and what we've learned, I guess, in all of the other workshops and experiences we have teaching people technical skills is that the best way, in our opinion, is hands-on, beginner-friendly, and project-based. So we took that philosophy internally as well, and we just got started. And we really focused on giving people a permission to experiment and to try. That was sort of the first thing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But even more fundamentally, in order to kind of create this environment where people felt like they could freely use it, but we wanted to do that in a really safe and responsible way, we actually started with our code of conduct. This is our coders code. We have this on our website if you want to look at it in detail. But actually, with the support of our board, we said, okay, we are already in online spaces. We are already using a whole bunch of tools, and we can approach AI really similarly. And like we would in academia, give credit to someone's research, Star Trek AI paper, Rika, that you wrote, we felt that our approach should be to do the same thing. Let's encourage, but give credit where credit's due. If you use AI, be transparent about it. And so what you see in our organization in Slack is, someone will post something and they'll say, as ChatGPT has highlighted, or some of our team have named ChatGPT or their tool of choice. So as Gary said, or, they will just be transparent about their use. You'll even notice in some of our workshop content on our website, this description was generated by AI. So we started there fundamentally, which is let's create this space. Let's put some guardrails in place to get going, which is let's use it, but let's be clear that we're using it. So people know and are honest and transparent about it. And then let's actually start building things. So that's sort of the next thing in this kind of permission to experiment environment that I felt was really important, was that everybody on our team, me included, should start trying to build something. So I started hosting these lunch and learns where I would share my screen and open up a tool of choice and try to figure out how it worked. I was very clear with the organization and those that joined that I was going to be terrible and I did not know how to use it, and we were just going to figure it out together. And I think that really helped sort of break the ice for our team, who was also nervous to use some of these tools, to say, okay, if our leader is also willing to try to figure out how to do this, like we can try to figure it out. And then the team members who were incredible with the AI already were helping us and helping to level us up. So the next thing I want to share is a bit of one of the projects that we actually started pretty early. I'm going to show a few slides that are like kind of a rudimentary version of this. We've evolved it since and have built it, and our teams have contributed, but I'll share this use case because I think it's something that's really valuable probably to all of you, and it was certainly really useful to us. So one of those lunch and learns, we're trying to think about what is a problem that we have, constraint that we think could also be solved through technology and through generative AI specifically. So we'd already been experimenting, prompting, and using, in our case, ChatGPT on our own. And one of the things we do know, having taught AI for a while, and for me, studied it as well, is that it's really good when you have a clear use case, a clear sort of problem to solve. And at that time, like maybe many of you, we needed more money. We could still have more money if anyone has some. And there are grants and donors and sponsors and awards, and there's just so many, and there's so much nuance. Like they're all similar in some ways, but they're very specific in a lot of other ways. So the first place that we decided we would build some support around was fundraising and grant writing specifically. So we used a functionality in ChatGPT called custom GPTs. There's something similar in Gemini Gems, Microsoft Copilot. All of the major tools have some version of this. So what I'm going to walk through is maybe more of like the theory or the approach, and know that there are ways and tutorials, and there's specific ways that all of these tools, based on your organization's tool of choice, you can do something similar. But what we basically did was we're working on creating our own GPT. So instead of going into opening up ChatGPT or Gemini and just asking, we were actually creating a kind of more powerful, more curated version of this. So this is kind of the back end if you were going to configure it. What you do is you name it something fun. Gary, again, is a name that some of our team has named theirs. You give it a description and you give it a set of instructions. So like you might prompt, if you have used you give it some guardrails. This is what I want it to do. I want the responses to be professional and precise and tailored. We want you to make sure that the funding proposals align with priorities. You put in a bunch of instructions. We also put in some starting conversation starters on that open screen. So things that we do often: draft a proposal using the info I share, suggest some other funders for the project, you know, key questions. These are just like shortcuts, basically. And then what's really, really powerful, and what we chose to do, is to add to the knowledge base. So right now, if you use Gemini or Copilot or a tool, they'll access the web. Maybe some of your charity or nonprofits organization will be available, but there will be a lot of things that are, you know, unique to you all. What we decided to do is to contribute to this knowledge for our custom GPT. And this is where every organization needs to really think about what your process, your stance is going to be on what you can and cannot share, or are willing to share here. I'll talk about it in a minute, but we didn't share any confidential information. So it took us a lot of time to go through documents that we would use in the fundraising context to make sure there was nothing that was confidential, like donor information, addresses, emails, etc. But then once we stripped that all away, we started loading that knowledge into our custom GPT. And what that did is it gave it our template proposals, it gave us pitch decks, past funding applications, things that we could be useful if we were going to go apply to a new funder. So you can load all of that in here. You can also, if you see in the next screenshot, give it access to the web or not. So you can, you know, encourage it to look outside as well. Maybe again, if you want it to find additional funders or opportunities, or you can keep it closed to just the information that you share. But what happened, and then what we did subsequently as we started using it more and more and more, is that it would help us, you know, do a first draft of a new funding proposal. It would help us come up with ideas. It became, for our fundraising team, like a really awesome brainstorming partner that knew a lot more about all of our funding opportunities and our approach than I think any one of us alone knew. As you'll see in the next version, it does output, and the capabilities of AI is, like, as we know, the pace, things are just, you know, changing infinitely every single day, it seems. But what we would do is we'd take that information, we would look at it, dissect it, edit it. Really, for us, it's a first draft. And then we would input it into a proposal, you know, but we still had all of the choice and all of the discretion making edits as well. But it helps speed up that brainstorm time, finding the right fit. It was huge. We also, this is an example of a kind of template. We put the information in, but some other times we use AI, Canva. We use AI to help generate images, to edit images, to like mock out layouts. So we're using it in a few other use cases within the organization as well. But I think the really important thing is that it just becomes like, you know, more is more. So you can be more creative. You can have more time to focus on, you know, the real specific nuance, as opposed to like drafting everything, and just be a lot more efficient. It really just kind of became an extra partner for us. But what was awesome about this is that it was really custom to us. So we weren't getting responses that were like all over the place. They felt, you know, in tone and in brand, and used the information that we had. And so the outputs have actually been very, very good and really helpful and useful to us. Yeah. Okay. And I'll hand over to Omar for another use case.
All right. So really, the transformation of financial management through AI is something that I'm very excited about. It's early days, but we've seen a lot of really great results so far. AI is becoming highly useful really as a tool in financial forecasting, expense categorization, and grant tracking. Today at Ankle, we use a tool called Spotlight Reporting, which integrates into many of the off-the-shelf tools like QuickBooks Online. And it allows us to build enhanced reporting that is not available in QuickBooks today. And one aspect of this tool that we're starting to experiment with is predictive analytics. So predictive analytics allow us to leverage historical data to understand what future financial outcomes might look like. So for instance, what we have on the screen here this is a graph, a simple graph that's been created leveraging historical donations that an organization has been able to raise. And so that's the blue line there. And then the green is the prediction of what the future might look like. This is new, but there are a few foundational pieces that you really want to consider before you can start using this kind of a tool. First, you need to have good quality data. If you don't have a strong set of accurate financial records, any kind of predictive modeling will be meaningless because the ultimate baseline will be flawed. Secondly, the CFO's role is still in evaluating the scenarios and understanding if they really require further refinement. They just need to spend less time in the spreadsheets, and the risk of error and bias, of course, is minimized. But context is key, and that is where the CFO will continue to play a really important role. AI and financial operations is sort of the other side of it. It's on the data side of things. And that's a really exciting application for us today. And actually, we see more activity here and more really tangible results here today. Tools that we're using today leverage AI for auto categorization, duplicate removal, and ultimately reducing the risk of error in financial information. Interestingly, tools like QuickBooks Online are starting to implement AI-assisted agents that can easily perform tasks like generating invoices. So instead of going into QuickBooks and actually creating the invoice, you can tell the agent to do it and it'll generate it for you. AI is also being used for variance analysis, so spotting potential problems and opportunities to really help controllers and CFOs solve business problems. All right. You know, I love these. Another polling question. What is the biggest barrier to adopting AI in your organization today? Is it a lack of time and capacity, concerns about privacy and security, limited budget for technology, uncertainty about where to start, or is it leadership hesitancy or cultural resistance? So which of these would you select as the major barrier in adopting AI today? Let's see your results. Okay. So we have 13% saying a lack of time and capacity, 29% saying concerns about privacy and security, 18% saying limited budget for technology, 31% saying uncertainty about where to start, and 11% saying leadership hesitancy or cultural resistance. I wonder if that last one is also tied to concerns about privacy and security. So definitely hope to give you some insight there. And actually, this is good timing. Mel, over to you. Let's get into some of the details on privacy, security, and compliance.
Yeah, sounds great. And they're like, we could chat for another hour about all these things as well. So we kind of keep it to some high level do's and don'ts here. But yeah, I think this is fair. And I think it's important to note, especially for nonprofits and organizations, charities as well, we are often working with groups that are most vulnerable for whatever reason, whether it's youth, whether it's racialized, underrepresented folks, whatever that might be. We're often working, and I can appreciate and know that this becomes super important. I think it should be for every organization, but increasingly. So I'm not surprised by those poll results. Like that's what I've seen and what I've heard from other nonprofits and organizations that we've taught or we've worked with. And really, like every organization, I think it's important to have a conversation about your perspective on all of this. So these are do's and don'ts. Every do is, has the kind of a comparable don't. It's not fully exhaustive, but I think they're a good place to start. And so one of the first do's before you use any tool, whether it's free or not, I would say is to take a look at the documentation, privacy, security. A good tool will have that information. What are they doing with the data? What are they? How do they keep it secure and safe, etc. So that's an important do. A don't, and I know as a charities, we are often cash strapped. So that's a piece, and I resonate and empathize with that. But there's this interesting saying where if you don't pay for product, you may be the product. We say that in our business school. And that's the idea that not every platform, absolutely not, but like largely there is data becomes valuable to the large platforms. So I think it is important, if you are looking and if you're budgeting or if you have, influence over these decisions for your organizations, to be thinking about and to be doing that research on really credible tools, but also it might be worth investing in paying for a paid option for, additional security, privacy, et cetera. What I would say, no matter what tool you use, is really making sure for us you remove personal information, especially for our participants, learners, beneficiaries, donors, just making sure you're doing that as like a best practice. I would never upload that sensitive information, employee information as well. Being, aware of what you are uploading, if you do that either in, a custom way or just in your interactions, prompting with your tool of choice, recognizing, whether you can share that information or not. Something your team created is very different than your favorite book PDF or whatever it might be. And then I think really importantly, we'll talk a bit about ethics a little more next as well, but I think this idea, and there's this concept of human in the loop. I think, Rekha, you mentioned it as well, but, AI should not be like, well, first, two things. One, it should not be just a replacement. We often have to and always should keep humans in the loop in some way. So audit your use, like audit the outputs, but then even more broadly, when you think about the policies as your organization's stance on these tools, like it's not one and done, it's all fluid, it's living like we are. And so just really making sure that you are always keeping that in mind in all of it. And even when you're thinking about when and where and how you can use AI, there are things and places and use cases that may be less, like expose you less, let's say, to privacy, security, and compliance risks. And that might be a place to start. So, thinking about that and what your organization's perspective might be. You might not be ready to, upload all, upload your like funding decks and proposals, but you can use it as a brainstorm on, on creative material, for example. Like where is the right place to start? I think it's important to do that. And these are some of the kind of do's and don'ts of that. And then the next piece is around ethical considerations. And we talk and think about this a lot as well at CLC. We've been teaching technology skills to people in Canada since 2011, and we focus primarily on equity deserving learners who have been historically and currently are underrepresented in technology. We know that the technology that we use and that is around us has not been built by a group as representative. And I think that's no different for a lot of these large language models, these generative AI tools, the data that they've been trained on can often perpetuate like what, sort of these dominant perspectives in society. So I think it's important to always recognize that there can be, and there often is, bias in the data that has been used to train AI, which is why it becomes so important to be like vigilant, to always have a human in the loop, right? To be critical about the outputs. It can be really great as a first draft or really great as, like an input into a bigger process, but that is definitely something to be thinking about as an organization. There's a growing conversation around like the environmental considerations as well, and that may be something really important to your organization. There was this interesting article that went around a couple of weeks ago about how much it costs to cool down the data centers that are processing all of our prompts and requests, and how much it costs to use the words even please and thank you, because that's 2 more words that ChatGPT or Gemini has to process and make sense of. And there is a huge cost to like making the technology we use run. Always has been, because Google search also requires energy, but that's definitely a conversation or something to think about. So it's really important to think about how to like be responsible in its use. And that's, I think, a role that all of us as nonprofits and, the unique perspectives of our organizations and those that we serve can bring to conversations. And I think also even more reason we believe at Canada Learning Code for all of you to experiment and to try and to use, so that we can be contributing and we, to advocate and to be informed in the discussions that we have about where we want this technology to go. And I think, again, related to sort of what I said, is that it can be very convincing. It can be very, it can seem really accurate. So just remembering that, and the outputs, again, reflect what has been put into it. One of my favorite sayings about AI is that it does not think, it predicts. And it is based on math. It doesn't think, it predicts. So it is doing that based on history and historical data. And so just recognizing that, getting a chance to use it, I think just helps you and hopefully all of us just continue to push and advocate for the technology that better works for all of us. And speaking of all of us and what's next, Rika, why don't you share where AI is heading?
I guess I got this topic because I have such a vivid imagination. Is that why, Omar? You needed me to talk about
You're ahead of your time.
Exactly.
You're ahead of your time.
Exactly.
Yeah, way ahead of my time, even though it was a B. I'm not bitter at all, Mel. Not bitter. Look, since I feel like the early decades in AI were more research and academic oriented, and there was so much to learn that we weren't seeing applications in human life. It was all in an ivory tower. But in the last decade, we are seeing so many things which are just within our grasp as humans. We see AI being so integrated into our lives that I feel it was slightly evolutionary, but now the steps are quite revolutionary. It's evolving rapidly, and the future does hold transformative potential. I think it can certainly help us redefine how not-for-profit sector and organizations within the sector can actually have more impact. It can help us work smarter, it can help us expand our reach, and it can really help us drive our mission to the degree that we want to drive our mission, right? Certainly, there is future beyond ChatGPT. There are autonomous agents. Remember, I talked about that, more decision making. There's a lot of AI-driven process automation. I was reading about this, a set of factories that are now completely robotic process automated. So no human beings at all on the floor. The human beings are more in the R&D phase, and then all of the manufacturing is fully automated. And I do believe that while those are industrial examples, we do have some areas within our sector where we potentially could have a greater degree of automation than we have today. Again, not denying at all, Mel, the fact that we absolutely need human intervention. But I was thinking that some areas where, there could be interesting ways by which donors could communicate with us. There could be donor communication bots. There could be a greater degree of personalization in how we interact with donors that we can take advantage of without necessarily hiring agencies and more people. I guess if I had to net that out, I would say we definitely need to prepare now because it's coming. Regardless of all of the pros and cons, it is coming. It is becoming more pervasive in our society. So we definitely need to prepare now so that we can thrive later. And if you were to say, okay, where do I start? Especially to, I think it was the set of people who said they just don't know where to begin. I think I got some really good tips from you, Mel, as you were talking about this. I do think it's important to provide the permission to experiment because there are going to be all levels of desire and interest and capability. And there is no wrong starting point. It's a starting point and it's an iterative process. So really love the idea that Mel discussed, which is, hey, have lunch and learns and find safe ways to practice it together, to laugh together, fail together, succeed together, right? But the spirit is curiosity and experimentation. One great example from you, Mel, the first thing about going and updating your code of conduct and the privacy policies. This does not need AI to generate it, but you certainly can consult with AI and figure out how you want to approach this topic of experimentation and beyond in your organization. And updating your code of conduct may be a nice way to think through that and strategize. And of course, finding one problem that you're all interested in and deeply committed to, perhaps, or just want to tangentially try out, might be a good area, a good starting point to test out any one of those AI solutions that are available today. So those are my three starting points, I guess. I will add a little bit of a fourth point, which is that this is a technology shift. It's also a huge cultural shift. At a very large organization where I am a volunteer, we all have access to Microsoft Copilot. Um, and one of the things that I find is some of us are taking to it more naturally, and many others are not. So it is a cultural shift. And if you're making the investment, it is important to provide an environment where people can take small steps and fail and succeed and experiment. So with that, Ravi, why don't I hand it over to you to sort of talk about some of the things at Enkel which are relevant to our conversation here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Rekha, and such a great conversation around everything AI there. We've had lots of great questions, and we're going to get into those in a minute. I just want to spend a couple of slides on our shameless plug, if you like, but really talking about how Enkel really can support, a lot of the attendees of today within their bookkeeping services and really leveraging AI to really help with good bookkeeping. A lot of our technology stack relies on AI, and we actually use it ourselves internally here as well. And we are seeing the benefits of doing that in terms of accuracy, speed, and really helping us with our processes. The one thing that has become really apparent when I'm talking with a lot of executive directors of nonprofit organizations is that often they're bogged down in the books and having to do a lot of this stuff through manual processes themselves. And really, that's where we come in to be able to lift that away from them and give them time back in order to put better focus into other areas of their organization. So really, why Enkel? We really take away those compliance headaches and make organizations audit ready and compliant. We offer clarity for the board and funders and getting financial reports that really make sense. Again, really using the capabilities of AI. We allow executive directors, treasurers, finance members, and professionals more time for their mission. Taking away all of this manual process and having to get bogged down in the books, we handle the numbers, they focus on impact. We offer seamless year-end processes. We all know how busy that time period on your financial year-end can be, and how stressful it can be. So lifting away the time and the stress is something that we are here to do. We are experts in non-profit organization accounting. So non-profit organizations really is our focus, and it's what we do. We know the unique requirements, and we speak the language of non-profits. On to the next slide. So away from just regular bookkeeping, accounts payable, payroll, we do offer other services that go beyond that. And this is where the AI really comes into its own. Again, I heard something here talking about predictability, and that's really what AI does, and it allows us to take baseline financials, apply AI to give us really, really concise reporting efforts around controllership and CFO services. We also have a really robust team of controllers and CFOs who are here on hand to help your organizations grow from a strategic level. So engaging these services with us really give you financial oversight, monthly, quarterly reviews to keep you on track, budgeting and forecasting support, building a really resilient financial plan for your organization, helping you manage risk and identifying and mitigating any financial threats, and then giving you board-ready reports so you're not flustered and going into board meetings without all of the facts to hand, giving you transparency for funders and your stakeholders. We also give you strategic resource allocation, so we're ensuring that your funds are used effectively for impact. So these really do come with our top tier services, and we're ready to have that conversation with you. If any of this has really resonated with you, and that you do find yourself in situations where you are manually using processes and want to take that away, please do organize a chat with me. I think I will give you my contact details at the end of these slides. So we've had lots and lots of questions coming in, and thanks to Charity Village, they've helped already answer a few in the chat. But we're now going to go to the Q&A and interactive discussion. Apologies up front if we don't get to absolutely all of them today. There is quite a lot here today, but we will try our best. And if we don't answer any questions live, we will do our best to go through the questions and come back to the individuals. So the questions that I've seen come up are really centering around 3 or 4 main areas, quite predictably. Safety and security is one, cost is another, grant writing specifically is another, climate and the environment, and then AI accuracy. We've had a lion's share of questions around safety and security, so I'll open this to our panel of speakers. The first question is, what are the limits for non-paid subscribers accessing shared GPT? In our experience, they worked well for persons creating them, but limited in use for others.
Maybe I'm going to jump into this.
Yeah, no, please
'Cause
go
I can-
ahead. I think
yeah.
this is your area.
Yeah, some of the functionality for some of these, for ChatGPT does require a paid subscription. That said, the sort of approach I walk through, like you can do something really similar in a free version because memory has improved so much for these models. So you could still upload, you know, sample proposal deck. So there is a way to do it. Without, now again, every tool is different and every organization will have a different maybe package if you already have a tool of choice. If not, and you're just using it on your own, then, you know, and it's free, like there are alternatives. And at the end of this, we'll share some of the AI nonprofit workshops that we as a charity run for other nonprofits as well. But there is an alternative to do something that isn't paid. That said, like creating your own custom GPT, like it does to the second part of the question, the person who has the account's the one that's training it or adding information, but you can create a link that's you can be used by anybody for free. So once you create it, then you can create a link and they can't configure it, but they can use it. So if you have, you know, a license for yourself and you have a team, the team can still use the tool you've created, and you know, they don't have to have a paid subscription. And again, all the other tools have some version of this as well. So yeah, I'll pause there. I know there's some other questions related, but I'll wait, Ravi, till you get to them.
Absolutely, thank you for that. So more questions around safety and security. This one is, I guess, on a lot of people's minds, but who actually has access to any in-house information that you upload into ChatGPT? And is it shared in any way outside of your organization? So you've covered that slightly in the previous answer, but I guess it's how secure is the information that I'm uploading into ChatGPT? Does it go anywhere else?
Do you want me to start this, Rika? And then you might have a perspective too on that. Yeah. So again, and this is where there's no sort of one size fits all. And again, this sort of like notion of if you don't pay for the product, you might be the product. And so just that skepticism, I think, is important. For something like ChatGPT, which I'm more familiar with, you maintain control to the inputs and the outputs, but they may use the data to train their models. If you have an enterprise version, or a business version, by default, they don't use it to train the models. Like there is this additional like security and privacy that is built into these versions. Now, even on a free version, you can turn off that feature should you not want your data to train the model, but there are differences and the tools are different as well. And I saw you nod, Rika, so maybe the Microsoft and perspective you can add in too, but there are nuances based on your tool of choice and your payment. Yep, go ahead.
You're exactly right, Mel. Typically what the organization that's providing the tool does is, one, they do have a terms of well, I'm going to say terms of reference, but terms of service is what I'm thinking for, which I would absolutely encourage you to look at. And if it is a 50-page document, feed that into ChatGPT and say, please summarize this and give me a perspective on how is my data secured. You'll get an answer. So the larger organizations absolutely do have the terms of service. They do have disclaimers which say that they don't directly use your data, but they will use it for aggregation and model training purposes. So yes, in a free tool, your data can be used to train the model, as Mel said, or for aggregation purposes, meaning there's not one single name that's pulled out. It could be a set of demographics or something like that. So you do have to understand and be okay with how the data is being used. And if you cannot find the terms of service, then I would say be cautious of using a tool that does not publish it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just to like maybe make it practical for our case, like this is regardless of the tool or the tier or the pricing, like I would never include certain information that's private, right? Like again, like I mentioned, the do's and the don'ts, donor information as well. But I think this is where as nonprofits and charities, there is some information that we have that's actually widely available anyway that could be useful. So when we looked at, and we're building our fundraising model, for example, we make our annual report data available. We make our financial statement data available. So there were some, for many organizations might be proprietary, but for us, because you could search and find that anyway, we had like on the web, if you just did a ChatGPT search, you could find it. So we felt like there were certain information that, we would be willing to upload and others that we wouldn't. So again, never our learners, never our employee information, but like our annual data information that's not specific, it's an aggregate that we already could find on the web, and that these tools were scraping, like we could use to our benefit. So I think it is very, very important to also think about it in your org as well.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, as we are approaching the 1 hour mark, I would like to note that we are going to extend the webinar by 10 minutes. As a reminder, we are recording today's session, and if you need to leave at the hour mark, you will still be able to watch the full webinar recording tomorrow. So let's just jump back into the Q&A session for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercedes. So let's move away from the security side of things and just focus on grant writing. This has come up a couple of times. I've actually merged two questions into one here. So are there specific AI-backed grant writing platforms that are available? And which of those are most effective for grant writing specifically?
Omar, I know that there are platforms available for grant writing. I cannot comment on the effectiveness because I've not personally compared and contrasted them. I'm going to say a few names that I came across during my research process. Please don't take this as any endorsement or advertising, but there are definitely grant writing platforms. There's something called Grant Boost. There's another one called Coral AI, I think. I might be getting the name wrong, but I think I'm correct. There's something called Grantable. So during my research, I have come across them. They all seem to have an interesting, nice, user-friendly UI. I've never used them to generate a grant and sort of compare and contrast.
Yeah, I was gonna say we built our own, but there are other tools, and there's also, I mean, feels like there's a AI for every specific use case you could possibly imagine. So, maybe part of it, like Tableau AI is great for data visualization, Canva around like the creative side of a proposal. Like, so there's lots of pieces together. And then, yeah, Rick, I think, you named some specific ones too, for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. AI accuracy. So we've mentioned here a few times that AI is not the replacement. Should humans be double checking absolutely everything it gives us?
Yes. There's a study. There's a study, some of you may have heard of it. It was with some BCG consultants, and they, it gets shared often, but they took a kind of problem with a group of consultants, very skilled on their own, AI on their own, and then consultants using AI. And sort of no surprise, the most effective at solving the problem were the group of people using AI. And I think that has become the, academic paper, let's just say, I think it's the Jagged Frontier at Harvard, but it's this idea that there's still so much value and benefit, and I think forever will be, by having humans. And then because of things like hallucinations, or I think it's actually confabulation is the real technical term for that, but like, because there's still risk of error, and if not error, bias, that I think that humans should always be in the loop to some degree. It's even more important depending on how you plan to use the output of it.
Yeah.
Rika?
I'll add just one trivia here, Mel, given my love for trivia. There's a whole field of research around explainability in AI. Because as a human, there are some things that we can check and double check. There could be other piece inferences which are harder for us to check because there's just so much past history and we can't really analyze it. So there's a whole field of research around explainability, which is that if there is a result or an inference, is there a way to backtrack that and try and understand the logic of how this was created? Still, I would say in its infancy, we are not there yet. There's no real tool in the market today that does this. There are a few startups that are emerging in this area, but for now, if you are using AI, just don't assume that it's always correct. Do your own sort of, either have a disclaimer if you're saying something that can be protected with a disclaimer, do that, or double check. I'd agree with that, Mel.
Yeah, just to add from a finance perspective at Ankle, and I think Ravi, you actually said this at the beginning, we review everything. We don't rely, we have found that the reliability has improved, the consistency has improved, and I think that will continue, but it's not 100%. It does get it wrong, and that's why we need a human to check, verify, make sure that it's accurate.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you for that. So here's a great question, and I guess this is affecting many organizations today. But how do nonprofit organizations specifically tackle the resistance to change when it comes to implementing AI and really shifting culturally towards embracing AI and not being fearful of it?
Rick, are you a good example of this? No? You're on mute. Rick, you're still on mute, I think.
I can try and summarize some of the patterns that I saw when the co-pilot adoption was happening with this large humanitarian organization that I volunteer for. Some of the things that they did really well was they framed AI as an ally and not a replacement. Now, this organization has volunteers like me who volunteered for 5-10 years. There are volunteers, believe it or not, one of who that I've worked with, who's volunteered for 60 years. That's a lot of change. That's a lot of learning, right? So for some people, it was just the framing of it. It was not even that, hey, you must use it or you need to use it. It was more that it's an ally. It's not a replacement. Just as you're using Alexa or Siri at home, here at work, you're using this. And in many cases, we used it for simple things, not super complicated. For example, we used it for translation. Meaning, hey, you have your set of instructions for resuscitation in English. Can you try generate it in Spanish and see what happens? So there were simple things that that we were coached to do, and it all framed AI as an ally and not as a replacement for any of our skills. And certainly started with small wins. Mel, loved your example of the lunch and learn. Similar to that, we were given a presentation. Everybody was invited to a variety of lunch and learns. We were all given the opportunity to play around with Copilot and you know do things that were interesting to us. And we did small things, very small things, but it helped us grow familiarity, right? And certainly one of the important things was to make it all fun and accessible. The opportunities for learning were low pressure. They were not necessarily online video courses with a deadline to finish by end of Friday and sort of put pressure. They were more oriented toward smaller learnings. And one of the things that they are starting to do, and I think it's a great idea, I hope it continues, is to showcase success stories. Where, hey, look, so-and-so did this, and it was a cool thing that they did. And it need not have solved all of world's problems, but it was a good use case, a simple thing, something that somebody did. So really, they're starting to create heroes for usage of the tool. I'd say those are the patterns that I think might be helpful to replicate.
Yeah, I would just add to this, maybe like a controversial different perspective, but like I think about this a lot in digital transformation. Sometimes everyone needs to use it. Like there's tools like email, like everyone just sort of had to use email in the workplace at some point for organizations. But I think the interesting thing about AI is that like you could start with just some really keen super users. Like if your organization just doesn't know and is worried about the big resistance and the change, like finding those people that are keen, the problems that are unique to solve, like to start, like because changing everything at once. So I think that like I still advocate for workshops and everybody having an exposure in the same language, but you could like also think about, where do you get the buy-in within the organization, and having these cross-functional teams that are working on it too, as like maybe, part of that implementation piece as well. And then eventually things move slow and then they move really fast, right? And then it's like technology that we didn't know how we lived without. But yeah, I think there's some different ways depending on your size and truly like the capability of the team.
Excellent. So just a couple more, I think, because we are running up on time here. This one's a great one. So where can NPOs go to or hire organizations to start their AI integration? Is there anywhere they can go and get training for their employees specifically around AI?
Rick and I both have a shared bias perspective.
Well, I was going to send people all to Canada Learning School, the introduction to AI.
Yeah, we do. So we've done tons of public workshops, but we also have a series, AI for Nonprofits, free workshops we'll do private to organizations. So if you want something that is, just to your organization, and you have the support to do that, like you can contact us. That'll be in the slides and the follow-up. But then if you just as an individual want a place to start, we do a lot of free pay what you can workshops too that are on a whole bunch of different topics. We have also, a community organization that helps people go even deeper. It's a career collective, but you can find all of that in the info we'll share on our website. But we love to help. So, and talk about this stuff. So find us.
If it's a question of finance and getting your organization set up on the tools that will help you leverage AI in finance and accounting, some of the things that we talked about today, then Ankle can definitely support that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for presenting such an informative webinar today. Do you happen to have any final comments before we sign off?
We just have a final slide here that we just want to make ourselves available to anybody that wants to know more. There were some more questions here that we didn't get around to. So again, if you do find yourself in a position where you do want to talk to any topics that we've talked to here today, feel free to contact me. You can book a consultation and I'd be very, very happy to be speaking with you. So I will be in touch to all the attendees and I look forward to speaking to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind everyone that you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the webinar recording. Please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You should see a survey link pop up right here in Zoom following the session as well. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us for our next free webinar, Legacy Giving Made Simple. You can find more information on this and all of our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Thanks again for joining us. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.